Hi, Internet! So, we're back. This is episode 22 of the Gamedev Cast, and I know we've been away for a while. That's entirely my fault. I've been doing other stuff while GDC was going on. Everyone was busy while GDC was going on. Of course, that's natural. Some of the stuff that I've been working on, I will talk about a little at the end of the podcast, but first I want to introduce my guests. So, we have returning guest Joe Wilson. Hi, Joe.
Hey.
So Joe is better known as Earthquake around the internet, and he works at Marmoset. Those are the awesome guys that make the Marmoset Toolback, which is a 3D rendering engine that you can use to preview your or to showcase actually your art, your real-time art for games or any real-time environment, pretty much. And they have recently released Marmoset Toolback 2. No, not that recently, but recently enough, I guess. Um, that uses the PBR engine, so you can make stuff for PBR if you want to try your hand at PBR textures and using the new next gen workflow. I'm also joined by I really hope I'm pronouncing this right. Mira Karouta, is that
Yeah,
right?
that's good enough. Yep, absolutely.
All
Hi
right,
guys.
so Mira is a freelance 3D artist, and well, she makes environments and 3D for freelance, pretty much. So Mira, welcome.
Thank you. Hi.
And I am myself. I am Mattias Van Camp. I'm a technical artist. I live and work in Bruges, in Belgium. I'm currently working on an educational platform for kids in grade school, which released actually just 2 weeks ago at this point, actually. So that was pretty exciting. So without any further ado, we'll get started on the topics. So today we're talking about GDC. Of course, GDC just happened. It was a pretty exciting period, actually, a pretty exciting couple of days, even from the sidelines. I wasn't actually there, but you guys were. So tell us what it was like to, Joe, like tell us what it was like to be on the trade floor, having a booth.
Sure. Okay, so this was actually the second GDC that I've been to. Last year was the first, and I went with a couple of the other guys from Marmoset, Andres and Jeff, our engineers, and we just had an expo pass, and we were there just checking it out, and we ended up kind of basically giving impromptu demos at like the Polygon party, and basically anyone who we found that was interested in to see what we were doing with Toolbag 2, which was kind of at like a alpha stage at this point. We got a pretty good reaction there, so we decided that this year we would actually come back and get a small booth. So we did that this year, and it was a really interesting experience. For me personally, I was like super crazy nervous, right, about being on a booth floor for like 8 hours a day for 3 days, or well, it's like the last day is like 4 or 6 hours or whatever, but it was really fun. Actually, like after I got over, I think it was like the first introduction that you have to make. You have to go up to someone, look them in the eyes, shake their hand, introduce yourself, and like explain what your product is. That's the most absolutely terrifying moment. But like once you get over that, it's just like super smooth, and you realize that you're just talking to a bunch of game industry nerds, and you're talking about stuff that you know a lot about, and you're real excited about, and it comes out real natural after that. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. So did you talk to anyone? Like, of course, there was a bunch of interesting people there, but there was a high amount of high-profile people there as well. So did you talk to any of those?
I got to meet some people from Blizzard, and I got to meet Moose on Polygon, who's Ari Mountain, I've always wanted to, who has probably the most amazing name in the world. I got to meet him. I was real excited about that, and I met so many people that like I'm drawing a blank on specific names, but it was really cool to meet a lot of really talented people there.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, Mira, you were there, like from the other perspective, you were there on the trade floor, going around meeting people. So how was that?
Yeah, it was great. I think it was better than I expected, actually. The way I approached it was like last year, my friends from the UK, when I was studying there, my friends from there went to GDC last year, and I kept telling myself, I was like, oh, I wish I could go to GDC, but then I thought about it again, and I was like, wait, if I start like saving up from now and working on everything, I'll be able to go out next year, and it would be my first trip to the States. I'm from Jordan, so like that's a huge trip to be making out all the way from Jordan to the States. So
Yes.
it was like a huge investment financially, time-wise, and in every respect. So it was my action plan was for a whole year to really work on myself and my art for the year, and not take as many jobs as I could, you know, just to really focus on myself and reinvent myself as an artist, not just as like my getting my art better, but getting myself better and knowing how to present myself and market myself, because I think that's a major thing that you need to be doing, especially going out to GDC.
Yes.
And I only had the expo pass, and I was perfectly happy with that, because I could be going to the talks and I could be doing all that stuff, but for me, starting out, trying GDC out for the first time, I wanted to try the expo pass, and I wasn't intentionally like overlooking for a job, so I wasn't like forcing myself on anything or anyone. I was just like completely focused on presenting myself the best way that I possibly could and see how the reception of that was.
Well, that's a really good way to go about it. So you went around meeting people and profiling yourself to fellow developers and presenting your portfolio and presenting yourself as a person to them. Now, as I understand it, there were a lot of people there, a lot of big, like people from big companies and very important people that have a lot of pull in the industry. So did you manage to, like, what I'm wondering about actually, if you're going to GDC, is how to approach people that, for example, have 30 years of experience, for example, like how, and this is actually a question to both of you, so how would you go about, and this is also probably a question that the answer to which is going to be very interesting to our audience, how do you go about approaching people on the trade floor? How do you just approach someone and stick your business card in their face? Is pretty much.
So I think like the most important thing is to be it's just natural and be yourself, and unless you're like super shy, then you have to kind of get over that and like put your best foot forward and just like introduce yourself. But yeah, I think you just have to kind of relax and realize that like everyone, even like the super senior people that I met, they're all like super nice people, and they're all video game nerds again. So like you have similar interests with basically everyone there. I think that's real important to remember when you're going and introducing yourself to people, and like people in the games industry are generally pretty awesome people too. So yeah, and I think like similar with the thing with me being at the booth, I think it's probably the same. Introducing yourself as an individual, it's just like getting over that first hump of making that first introduction, and then it just comes a lot more natural.
Yeah, so they can from then on, it just oh, hey man, my name is whatever, and then you just, after making the introductions, you just start talking. It's probably a good way to go about it.
Yeah, totally. And you know, it's smart to like look at everyone. So everyone has a badge, right? And it says who they are, what they do, and where they work. So like it's a real smart thing to like look at and say, oh, this is an environmental artist that I'm talking to. Then you can kind of talk to them about common interests. You know, start up a conversation that way. It's a real good way to like, you know like what ground you're on with that person based on the discipline that they have, right?
Yes. So well, as far as that goes, some of the talks that, like, speaking of common interests, some of the talks were actually sounded incredibly interesting to an outsider, as well as I imagine it sounded to people who were actually there. So, for example, a talk by Ken Levine that was made on, I think it was how they went about designing open world games. Quest design for open world games is actually what Ken Levine was talking about, and then there were another couple talks. One by Gavin Golden that I heard about was about iteration of character design. So it seems like pretty much every discipline in the arts of game development was represented in all of the developers that were there. Now, what I'm wondering about is how did the indie games do on GDC? Now, as far as the media coverage goes that I've seen, the indie games did quite well. There were a lot of indie games there and indie developers there. So, did you meet a lot of them?
I don't know that I specifically met. I think a lot of the indie game stuff happens in the first couple of days, and I didn't get around to seeing much of it. I think they have like a, what is it, IDGF?
Yeah, the IGDF.
They have a big section in GDC that's just dedicated to indie games, which is cool, and they have like awards, and that's always cool to just stop by and see every year.
Yeah, so I went around a little bit, not too much, and I got to see a few of the ideas, and they were really interesting. A few I was thinking like they're a bit bizarre, but in a cool way, you know. It's
yes.
Yeah,
one thing that I saw from a video from Destructoid was actually apparently there was a text adventure game that was working through like a receipt printer. Using like the input from it printed your text adventure as a receipt pretty much. So that's like you have 3 buttons, and then depending on which button you press, you make a different choice. Like in the old text adventures from like the 70s or well the 80s, I guess, and it prints your adventure as a receipt. So that's like an interesting way to experiment with different methods of input. But probably like the most interesting one, if not the weirdest one that I saw on that video, was you actually have to crawl into some kind of sleeping bag, it seemed.
Yeah.
Yeah, you saw that, right? So you actually.
And then they looked at me and they were like, "Do you want to try it?" I was like, "I'm good, thanks." But you know, it looked awesome. It looked really awesome. But I was like taken aback because I was like, I really liked it though. Like it was nice. It's like you get to see both people play and roll around without seeing their faces. So all you saw were like legs frantically and like their body like tossing back and forth. But then you could see the screen as well, so you could see what they were doing. So it wasn't like completely crazy, but you know, it was.
Yeah, exactly. So well, yeah, that's well, it's cool to see that the expo at large has really taken a huge interest into just doing indie games for the sake of them. So that's really cool. Now, of course, GDC itself was interesting to the outside world because of everything that was announced there. I think there were 3 big engines that announced not only big updates but also like releases and pricing plans, which was really cool. So we had Unreal Engine 4, $20 a month. CryEngine 3 was, what was it? $10 maybe? It was even less, right? And then Unity 5 is going to be. I don't think they've announced pricing for that yet, unless they're going with the same pricing plan as they have now. But Unity 5 is going to have like a lot of cool features that the other big engines have as well. So it seems like the engines all around are pretty much equalizing towards that new generation of graphics in the PBR approach.
Yeah, when you look at the kind of technical side and what a lot of those engines are doing, actually, Andres and Jeff, our engineers at Marmoset, spent a little bit of time just kind of going around and talking to various people at those companies, and I think a lot of the rendering tech is like really standardizing on like the PBR stuff, the physically based rendering, and the image-based lighting, and how they go about generating image-based lighting, and even some of the like the pro baking. It seems like that's really common in like all the engines that are coming out now. So it's cool to see kind of a more standardized approach to the major engines, because there's always been like a pretty big difference in like technology between Unity, CryEngine, and like UDK or UE3. So it's cool to see everything merging towards one more common goal as people kind of figure out like this is the way that people should be working. And I think that really will benefit artists a lot in that if you know how to make art for one engine, it'll be pretty easy to make it for another engine as well.
Yeah, exactly. I've also noticed that in generalizing tools, you also create a better platform for comparing art as well.
Yes.
Because, I mean, if you make something with the Unreal Engine 3 and you make something with CryEngine 3 as they are now, then you're going to have different results basically because of the way the tool is built. And that's not always something that the artist can help as much as they should.
Yeah.
So as far as that goes, I think it's probably good to have like a standardized platform to judge whether the art you're seeing is good for
What it
being
is.
built with the tool that it was built with. Is
Yeah.
probably a good way to say that.
Yeah, and that was something, especially as we developed Toolbag, that was something that we always have been kind of aware of. That, like, say, if you preview your models and everything in Toolbag 1 or 2, and then you're sending it to UDK or something, which has a drastically different lighting engine,
Yes.
you know, that can be a big problem in production. So I'm really excited that, like, the stuff that Unreal 4 is doing is very close to the stuff that we're doing in Toolbag 2. So I think that everything is just going to kind of like work better and play nice together, and it's exciting times.
Mm-hmm. So Mira, and actually this is a question for both of you. Did you guys go to any parties on GDC?
Yeah, Joe and I and the rest of, I think, our whole group, we all ended up in the Blizzard party.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And it was I think, even though I personally didn't go to any other parties, I feel like it was the best party I could have ended up at, and we were very fortunate, and it flowed very nicely as well, to the point where you could probably tell a game designer planned this party, or a bunch of them. So it was there was a lot of things. There was like an air hockey table that I think we stuck with for a while, and we had a little air hockey tournament. And then we moved on to what was the game called, Joe? The one with circles that we dropped in.
Oh, Connect 4 that I totally sucked at.
Connect
Yes.
4, yeah, that you totally sucked at and lost within the first minute. And then there was a lot of people and a lot of space, which was nice because there was a lot of people there, and it was a massive space, and it never felt like you were choking up. No smells, no sweatiness, none of that stuff. So that was great.
Yes.
And most importantly, the music wasn't very loud, so you could still have a decent conversation with someone.
Oh yeah.
Without yelling,
Yeah.
So that was really good.
I went to a few parties. I think it was on the first night in. I met Jeremy Salam on Polygon. I don't know if you guys know him, at a thing called Pow Pow Pow, which was like it was almost like a video game rave, is kind of what I could best describe it as. There was DJs doing like 8-bit music, and it was actually really cool. There was
I went to a party like that before. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
There was even like some people demoing like indie games on like the upper level of the bar.
Oh wow.
Yeah, the bar was called DNA Lounge, and I think the bar actually was started by someone who had a prominent place in like a tech company. So it's like a bar that's just like for nerds, basically, right? I think we ended up at the Unity party for a bit, which was I don't know. That one was just kind of like real typical club atmosphere with like music way too loud, and that wasn't the most memorable experience. And the Blizzard party was awesome. Like Mira said, it was like the perfect blend of like good food, drinks, music at an appropriate level, and like cool people that you could actually have conversations with people. I think I actually at that party, I think probably both Mira and I both probably met and talked to the biggest variety of people outside of the GDC floor. So that was a really awesome experience, and if we can get back into there, I'm sure we will go next year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could meet anyone, honestly, and I think that's way back to what we were talking about earlier about approaching people and talking to people.
Yeah.
You have to be wary of that throughout your entire week at GDC. So try to not be too messy with yourself, and on top of everything, treat everybody that you meet with respect, no matter how little or big their title is. Like, I think that's something we all learn before we get into the industry, while we're in the industry, while we're outside of the industry, is treat every single person with respect and the way you would another person without like devaluing them or knowing their title or any of that stuff, because even if they're on your same level, they could be the ones to get you the job at the end of the day or down
Yes,
the line.
exactly.
Yeah.
You never know. Even if you do, you never know who the person you're talking. Even if you do know who you're talking to, then you never know what the person you're talking to could do for you, or the other way around. So
Exactly.
that's a
Right.
really good way, I think, to approach everyone, is just never assume that they're anywhere. Like never assume. Always treat people with respect. It's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
Exactly.
I think.
They're all normal people, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? So it's like,
exactly.
Yeah.
I remember like the one GDC that I went to in my life pretty much was in 2010. That's a really long time ago though. That was GDC Europe that I went to when I was still in school at that point. So I was a first year student back then, so I had no contacts in the industry. I knew next to no one. And we were there because we were there with our school and we were representing our school. And we went to the Crytek VIP party, which was pretty cool. So that was the barbecue for the Crytek people who were organizing who were not actually organizing GDC, but one of the main sponsors for GDC Europe at in that year. And I remember that I found myself talking to the guy that would later go on to do Epic Mickey 2. So that was like the designer person. So and I just remember like I found myself amazed at how much beer was drunk there.
Yeah, there is a lot of consumption of alcohol at these events.
Yes.
I think that's actually probably another good thing to talk about. Actually, like you kind of are. I mean, it's cool to party and it's cool to drink and all these things, but I think that like especially for people that are new to it, and once you get to these parties, it can probably be a little easy to just like
Let go. Yeah.
to totally let go and get super drunk. And I really think that that's not a smart thing to do at these sort of
Yes.
events, because you're always like the entire time there you're presenting yourself as a professional, and so like you're pretty much working the whole time, even if you're having fun. So it's always important to think about like how everything that you do, all the actions that you take, really reflects on you as a person, both personally and professionally.
Yes.
And like I think it's the relationships that you can build at these sort of things are so important. I know that I don't know about you guys, like, but like all the work that I've had in the industry over 10 or 11 years has been through people that I knew personally. Like I've never really like cold emailed people applying for jobs and things like that. So I think like just personal relationships are so important.
Oh yeah, exactly. Now we actually have a question from the audience. Goalie Zero, he wants to say thanks to Joe and the guys at Marmoset. He says that Toolback 2 has really pushed his mesh presentation. And his question is, where do you guys see texturing and material technique going from now on with PBR? That's a good question, actually, because PBR is actually changing the way that we approach different styles of texturing. So basically, what I'm seeing now, or what I have been seeing ever since PBR and PBS have come on the market and have come on the radar of every artist in the industry, is people are generally using much more realistic approach to graphics instead of choosing the stylized way as an easy escape to not necessarily have to do material definition that correctly. Now it seems that PBR has pretty much solved that problem to an extent that the previous generation of graphics had a harder time of, because PBR pretty much by default everything is physically correct.
Yeah. So well, first off, thank you for
Goalie
using our
Zero.
software and joining.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's great to hear from people that use it and that like it. So yeah, I think that I think first off, I think the most important thing is that it's the PBR stuff it's really not all that different. Like a lot of people kind of make a big deal out of it when it doesn't necessarily need to be, if you've used like the basic diffuse spec gloss type workflow, it's really similar. The biggest difference is like now that our shaders are a bit more accurate in terms of like energy conservation, which is very important.
Yes.
But also that I think a lot of the improvement comes from using more sane and realistic values for all of your textures. It helps so much in the workflow, both from like an art direction and consistency standpoint. If you can share and reuse a lot of like a raw polished gold material should basically be the same in every asset in a game. There's you know what I mean, and
Yeah.
so there's a lot of reuse there that can improve efficiency and speed in your workflow, but it also ensures that that artists are creating textures with same values that are going to look good in a lot of different lighting environments.
Yeah. So it's basically a better way for art teams to share shader settings and values for textures for different materials in a way that makes the art direction for an entire game a lot more consistent than it would otherwise be.
Right.
Yeah.
I think as we go into the future, we're going to see a lot more tools and just like workflows tailored to those concepts. And something that's been kind of difficult previously is like finding a library of these values, like the calibrated values and everything. And like I think Quixel's, the new stuff that Quixel announced is really awesome in this regard, because they use physical scan data that they've taken, and then they can take it. You can take the Megascans data and put that through Dedo and layer it together, and you're pulling in all these texture values from real-world scanned surfaces, which just makes it a lot easier to. There's a lot less guesswork is one of the real big important things there, and a lot more automation that you can do, because like let's be totally honest, like a lot of texture work is just a lot of repetitive things, especially these days where you're defining material types more so than you're like painting cool details like you would with like a diffuse only workflow back 10 years ago or whatever.
Indeed. So it does seem like the more, but that goes back to that statement, right? So it seems like realistic graphics are becoming more and more of a thing, whereas stylized graphics are becoming either. I wouldn't necessarily say that stylized graphics are becoming the exception, but I would rather say that stylized graphics are actually moving closer to realistic graphics themselves as well, in the sense that they are moving closer to a lot more realistic material definition in the within that stylized like stuff with proportions and bright colors and
totally.
Yeah.
I think like Pixar does this amazingly well. They have very stylized work, but they're always on like the cutting edge of like what is accurate in terms of rendering. So I don't think that the new PBR type stuff is really mutually exclusive at all to stylized work. I think that you can push stylization through art style, like proportions and characters, colors, use of color. But like when you get down to it, like you still want like a metal to read as a metal, even if it's a stylized character, right? So like these basic like like the physics of matter and light, you kind of want them to behave the same, unless you're going for something like really surreal or something. Then you might want to do something totally different with your shaders. But like I think that the PBR stuff and stylized work can still work very well together.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it does seem like the new engines are I think they're more empowering than anything else. Because they're more efficient tools. They're more standardized. They're more unified in their approach to creating graphics for artists. Now we've also seen, like, outside of the publicly available SDKs, we've also seen another engine come along, and that's the Snowdrop engine, which is from what Ubisoft is using for Watch Dogs and for the Division, the thing that the massive guys are working on. Now, it does seem like particles seem to be a new thing in this new generation. I think we've already concluded that from games such as infamous Second Son and stuff like that. Now, what I'm mostly impressed by is that it seems the hardware now can run all of that stuff. Like, when I was playing Warframe, just a couple of weeks ago, that game uses bazillions of particles that are all physics enabled, and I just don't know how they managed to pull it off. Like, I have a pretty good computer, but still. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I see. I'm just amazed by the technical innovation that new engines offer. And they just handle the same stuff a lot more efficiently so that more things can be put on screen. So that actually makes me wonder, like, when you start seeing indie developers using Unreal Engine 4 and CryEngine 3 and really big AAA engines for pretty much indie games, small scale projects will start to look incredibly good because the tools are just better than what they can do with open source software or maybe whatever software they can afford, which previously wasn't the big engines. So I'm really excited to see where that's going to go.
Yeah, I think with the tools more available, like at lower price points to indie studios, I think there's like, I mean, the only thing that really stands in the way of indie studios making awesome looking games is really just the kind of the incredible amount of time that it takes to make really high end stuff. But you can do, again, like with more stylized stuff, I think you can get really far without a crazy amount of time spent on like cranking out super detailed Gears of War style art assets and things like that.
Yeah,
there's a
exactly.
lot of other options out there.
And also, it seems when you go around in AAA games, it seems like AAA games generally polish their art to a ridiculously high level. But it does seem sometimes it seems like they polish it maybe too much.
Yeah.
And they just go to an extent that is maybe not necessary. And I think that indie studios have the freedom not to do that because they have this romanticization speaking for them. Because everyone has romanticized indie games, right?
Yeah.
So I think they have this romanticization speaking for them because they can get away with less polish, maybe, so they can just focus on the important things. Now, for me, it seems interesting to see the big tools become available to those guys because when they start working with those really cool tools, we're gonna see some cool things. So, oh wait, Mira, we're not. You're not coming through, all right.
Okay, how's this?
Oh yeah. Now you are. So, were you saying something?
Yeah, I just said like it eliminates a huge chunk of the work that they wouldn't have to do. They just need to kind of work with it. But I think indie games in general, they have different intentions as opposed to AAA, and that's why their own thing. They're their own thing, and they a lot of the time they're all about charm and story, and I think that's what makes it so awesome and breaking the rules of AAA games and taking risks. So.
Yeah, exactly. So the margin for error is a lot smaller than with AAA. It's like, especially with Unreal Engine 4, what I'm really excited about is you can just pay $20 and have the engine forever, but you can only have that one build.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of blows my mind that they're doing that.
Yes, exactly. It's just like I did it like instantly almost, and so I've been messing around with it, and I can barely believe that they did that, to be honest. Because I mean, indie developers are just gonna rush over this and just say, "Oh, let's get a build, $20, and we can make our game."
I think that they're kind of really going after like Unity, very specifically to get that, because a lot of I think the perception had been kind of that if you want a full source license of Unreal 3, you have to be a huge developer, right?
Yes, that's the perception.
Yeah, that was the perception, and that they shot that perception into the sun.
Oh yes.
Now anyone who wants it can get full source, can do whatever they want with it for $20 a month or a one-time fee if they want to just get the engine in its current state. I mean, I think that's really cool. Mira, I had a question for you about the because whenever I look at your work, like your scenes and stuff, they have like a very distinct style. I wanted to just go back a little bit and ask you, like, how do you feel about stylized work and like current generation workflows?
Was for me?
Oh, for Mira.
For Mira.
Yes.
Okay. the thing with me, and then it's so unintentional with my art, especially the recent stuff that I do. Uh, I usually I look at concept art and I'll try to take that and put my own twist on it and add a storytelling layer or add a kind of more gamey cinematic feel maybe. Um, I've been trying to go for realistic lately, and for some reason I always end up pushing my silhouettes or my colors, and it ends up giving it this borderline stylized realistic look.
Hmm.
So I think that's something that's personal to me and I find interesting for myself, and I'll try to develop that as my own thing down the line.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
but uh, I'm not sure really. I
Okay.
can't. I haven't really seen it in myself. This has
Okay.
only been being pointed out to me recently
Okay. Cool.
by people such as yourself. So it's something I'm having to go back. I'll be going back home and I'll be like, okay, what am I doing exactly with this? And then I'll try to define that as my own thing, and
Yeah, I think
I'll try
I
to
think that's
develop it.
really kind of important. Like I see it in your work, and I think it's like um, just like personal branding and things like that. Like how your work can be instantly recognizable. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
hope so. I mean,
that's also
that's the
probably.
thing we all
Oh,
want
go
at
ahead.
the
Go
end
ahead.
of the day.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
and it's
Mira, go
part of
ahead.
being yourself. So
Hmm. Exactly. So that's probably also a good thing to consider when you're profiling yourself. Like I saw a really cool take on the business card thing on Facebook earlier, where there was an artist who was printing artwork on his business cards. So that was actually really cool. Like apparently he was complimented. That was actually on Polycount, if I'm not
Was
mistaken.
that Xavier Swizzle,
It could have been, yeah,
this crazy eye sailor guy?
yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Of all the business cards that I got, his was one of my favorite. But actually, Mira's was my favorite of all. Mira, you should tell them what you did.
I won. I won
Yes.
over
Why don't you?
Xavier's
Yes.
business card,
Tell us
and they
what you
told me
did.
that up front, and I was really excited about it. So it was really awesome. Um, my business card, I actually came up with this idea in my last year of university, and I've been using it since because I think it's a cool thing to have for me personally, and it's part of the whole identity thing and your personal branding. I used to print my personal artwork like Xavier would. I print my personal artwork or the project that I was currently working on one side of the business card, and then the other side would be my details and all that. But I've just kind of because I'm from Jordan, we have a lot of things in our culture that I could draw from and use to identify myself. And so we have a lot of souvenir stores back at home, and camels are a thing. We have a lot of camels back home,
Uh-huh.
and they're selling little camel figurines in souvenir stores back home, and they would be looped to each other. They'd be chained to each other, and I would buy a huge bulk of those, and I would dismantle all of them, and then I would put the needle back into the camel's neck or his butt, wherever it worked best, and I would loop. I would punch a hole through my business card, the corner of my business card, and loop a thread and back into the nail of the camel, and it would be attached to his neck. So it would be like a business card, and it would be a camel attached, a little wooden camel figurine attached to the business card.
Oh.
And I would call them my business camels. And I would be talking to someone for a while, and then I'd be like, "Here, let me give you my business camel." And the reaction is always the same. They're always like, "What the hell's a business camel?" And then I'd give it to them, and it would be kind of the thing that because I know what we're like as nerds on the inside. We all love to have little things on our desk or occupying our desk or little
Yes.
artistic things or whatever it is. So I saw it as something that I would like to have on my desk. So I was like, maybe others would too. So I kind of gave
Oh,
that away,
wow.
and the response was awesome. I don't have one with me right now. I thought about showing it, but then I don't have it. Joe has one, but he can't show it. But he
Yeah.
does have an image. He does have an image of it. So I guess we can post that
Yeah.
later.
I tweeted about it. I tweeted that Mira won basically. Mira won GDC. Yeah. It was. I thought that was the most interesting and unique way to like brand yourself and like make your interaction with somebody else very memorable. And I think that she did a really good job at that. And I think that I don't know if I would necessarily tell people to exactly copy her, but like if you can think of creative ways to make yourself and your work memorable, and I think it has to be both. It can't just be one or the other, really. I think that's really positive, and it's like a great way to break ice and start conversations and things like that with people at GDC.
Yeah, and it's like little sound bites of yourself, you know what I mean? You don't want to tell people the story of your life. You don't want to break yourself down completely to a person because they don't have that kind of time on their hands, especially when they're like a bit important, you know what I mean? Or in positions where they've been hearing this crap from students all day. You know, you just want to give a sound bite of yourself out and make them curious and kind of leave that at the door and, you know, pick up the communication later on.
What was the exchange rate for Camels to epic meow cats at the end of the last day?
Oh yeah, I walked up to them to the epic booth and I was like, I'll give you a camel, I'll give you a business camel in exchange for one of your Unreal cats and your epic cats. And they were like, what the hell is that? And so like I put the camel forward and they were all like super fascinated and they were like, take 3 cats. And I was like, that's great. So I took 3 cats in exchange for 1 camel. So I thought that was a pretty good deal.
So you're actually trading out cards? Nice.
I actually made 30 of them, so
wow.
I think, yeah, they were limited edition camels.
See, that's how you make yourself memorable. That's that's how you do it. So something that actually made me think of something is how do you handle follow-up? Like you don't just this is a part of the networking experience of GDC that I think escapes most of us. Is you go there, you hand out your business cards, you talk to people, even if you get past the point of interacting with people in a way that makes them remember you. How do you follow up on that? Like, how do you go home and send out emails like, hey, we met on GDC, and then what then do you do? Is, I think, a question that our audience will be very interested in. So, if anyone has...
Yeah, so I think there's... I think how you approach it really kind of depends on the sort of person that you met. I think like when you get home, the thing to do is kind of go through all your business cards, right? You just lay them all out, try to remember who was who, because this can be very difficult. And then like remember who you had like a connection with, I guess you could say. That sounds a little weird. But like who you had like a real positive conversation with, right? Yes. And then get in touch with them, you know, and send them an email or add them on Facebook, talk to them a little bit, say, hey, I'm so-and-so, this is my work, it was really nice to meet you, and if there was any like more detailed conversation you had with the person, like in terms of like probably on Mira's side, like employment potential, and like on my side with people, maybe they ask me about some features of the tools that we make, and just try to get like a kind of personal connection going there. And you know, if they get back to you, great. If they don't, it's not really a big deal. But it's important to come home and like just start working on those connections even further.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and try to remember what stood out in the conversations that you had, and have the follow-up kind of thing, and mention those so that they can remember you. Because it is a case-by-case basis. You know, every conversation is going to be different. So when you contact that person, you want to personalize it to them and like say, I really enjoyed talking to you about so and so, and you know, I look forward to seeing that thing you talked about, or the thing you know we could collaborate on, whatever it was. Because if you just send out like, hi, it was nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Bye. You know, it was like you won't remember you at all. You kind of just have to mention the night that you met as well, or the day, whatever it was.
Yes.
Very vaguely, just to make it even more like clear who you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Which kind of pushes the point home of don't drink a ridiculous amount so that you don't remember people. Like, say that would be a bad idea. And then also probably like as soon as you get home, probably start working on that so it's still fresh.
Yeah, so you don't want to go home and then have everyone remember you as, oh, that was the drunk guy, right?
Yeah.
You want people to remember you as the camel business card girl. You don't want to be the drunk guy.
Yes,
No,
exactly.
not at all. Yeah.
So,
I'd rather be remembered as that rather than the. Although, like, I did get a business card for dancing in the middle of the Blizzard party by the audio engineer because, like, he really liked the song that I was dancing to, and he was really happy that I knew the song and that I was singing along to it. He came up to me, he was like, "Oh, you know this song? It's such an awesome song." And I was like, "I know, that's such a great song, and there's such a good DJ group, and like the collaboration between these two artists is always so great, and they do a lot of them." He's like, "Yes, I know. Here, have my business card." And I was like, "Yeah, that's great. Here, have my business card. Okay,
that
bye."
sounds like the best conversation ever.
Yeah, yeah, and
It was the best. I think it was one of my favorite business card exchanges, and I remember that. I'll remember
and that sort of
for
thing
sure.
tends to happen as the night gets a little later, and everyone has had a couple drinks at that point, you know. And I think that's also a good point that like you still want to be yourself, and you don't want to hide who you are when you're like. I think it's probably easy to overanalyze all this stuff and like think that you need to shut yourself in and be like really buttoned up and uptight. But like that's the opposite of what you want to do. You just want to be very professional, but still yourself.
Yeah.
That's probably something.
Finding the perfect balance.
Yeah.
As soon as you've done that, you go a long way from there.
Yeah, and then when you have that balance, you don't even really have to think about doing it. It's just kind of natural. Like just be yourself and be cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly.
Edit yourself. More importantly, is learning to edit yourself. In your work, in your presentation, absolutely all parts of you. You just need to learn to edit yourself.
Yes, that's a really useful skill to have, especially if you're planning on going to any kind of networking event at all, pretty much. So actually, we have another question from same person as before, Goalie Zero. So he says, Mira, your Wanderlust environment is looking great. I love the neon rainbow lighting. He says that it adds some intangible feeling and story to it. So the question is that what you guys feel studios are looking for in environment art, storytelling? That's a good question, actually. So how do you present your environment art? Should there always be a story in there when you're going for a networking event? So should you make sure that the story your environment tells is obvious enough that anyone can see it, that you're showing it to at first glance?
I think so. I mean, especially.
Oh, you're not coming through. Oh yeah.
Just hold my it's important to have cool art. That's like really awesome. But if even more importantly is when you add the character and depth, and not even just in environments. We all know this in characters and absolutely everything. You always want to do the what, why, where, how kind of thing, and build up the character from there. With the Wanderlust project of mine, that I was basing that off of the movie called Enter the Void. And what I really liked about them is they pushed the kind of cinematic feel, like they bumped up the colors to like 200% kind of thing, and they had a lot of depth of field and all those things. And I'm trying to emulate that and still trying to maintain the story of the two characters within that movie, two main characters, the brother and the sister. And I'm trying to remember and write down and constantly iterate on what in their apartment was theirs individually and what they combined together. And I'm trying to put that all in one scene so that it's readable, so that when you see it, you could potentially tell that it's more than one person occupying it, and you could tell their gender, possibly their age range, and what their story could be together and their relationship or whatever it is. And I think that's something so important, and a lot of people don't do. A lot of people just aim for making that cool barrel or that cool fire hydrant. It's like we all want to acquire those skills. We all want to acquire material definition and all those things. But at the end of the day, if your stuff doesn't have character, if it doesn't have story, if it doesn't have depth, nobody's really going to remember it as well as they should.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So I think a great way. Sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to quickly say that, like, I agree, like, 100% here, and I think this is especially important for environmental artists. Like, if you can tell a story, I think that is even more important than a lot of the technical skills. Like, if you understand lighting and composition and the ability to set a scene so that it actually tells a story. That's like the biggest skill I would want to see in an environmental artist. But also, like, all those same concepts you can bring down from like a whole environment down to like the smallest prop. Like, you want to think logically about like how you do like your material wear, and like how the object would be used, and like how something would be scraped, or maybe a gun got dropped in a very specific way and made a real cool scrape. And like, I think adding those really unique details to objects is like Mira said, a wonderful way to make your work memorable, no matter what you're working on, if it's environments or props or characters or whatever.
So this can be applied to pretty much everything.
Yes.
Yes. So I think, yeah, a very good conclusion from that is to draw from that is, if your work tells a story at first glance, then that's when people are gonna remember you for, oh, that's the person who made that cool environment that told this story. Most of that's unconscious, of course, but it's a really good way to make an impression, I think.
Yeah, and it's always good throughout your project to ask for feedback, not on just a technical level, but on an artistic level, and ask people like, what do you think this is about? Who do you think is occupying this space? If you constantly do that, and when you receive the feedback from your friends or whoever's like looking at your work, try to work on those areas. If you haven't heard what you wanted to hear, work on that. And if you have heard something new and you thought that was interesting, elaborate on that. And there's so much to it that you can do, more than just a technical level. Because the technical stuff, like, you'll always learn it, and you'll keep learning it, because, let's be frank, we don't stop learning in our industry, and every day something new's coming out. But if you can really focus on your artistic side as well, and not stress yourself out too much about the technical side, because you will learn it, eventually, and as long as you're working on that, you will get that. But it's just important to work on it on like all across the board, not just on one specific area.
Yeah. So yeah, it's actually that's a very good conclusion to draw from that. So goalie zero, I hope your question has been answered, because we're now actually coming close to the end of the episode, because we've been streaming for just under an hour, so that's a very good time to round things off. Now, before we end, I want to talk a little bit about what I've been doing, which is part of the reason why the podcast has been away for. This has actually been a month since our previous episode, so that's pretty long. So what I've been doing is I've been working on a website called, for now it's called Gamedev Tweet. Some of you may have heard about it. It's the goal that we're eventually trying to achieve is to make a comprehensive list of developers who have been listed by discipline, with a lot of filter options. So you can filter for character artists, environment artists, technical artists. There are a total of 29 categories at the moment, I think. And our eventual goal is to make a website where developers can have mini profiles that they can put out there, so that people have a very easy way to get to them and to contact them. So with the added option to highlight yourself if you're looking for a job, so that recruiters have an easier time finding you. So that's what I've been working on for the past month, and this is also linked to the podcast, because we're using the podcast web space to host that. So so if you want to see what that's about, you can go to the link that we've posted in the description for this video. I will post it after the stream is done. So with that, I think we've come to the end of the episode. So Joe and Mira, thank you very much for joining us. I think it's been a very good episode. And thank you for the people who have watched us, and for the people who will watch us in the future, of course. So see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.